Dominic, great to see you.
It's good to see you too, Mike.
Dominic, we've known each other for, it seems we have some history. We've known each other for an awful long time. Do you remember how we met? I'm so old that I can't anymore.
I do. I completely remember. It was when I was, before I had my own business, when I was still an actor. And I was, when I was out of work as an actor, I used to try and sell pictures, run pictures from Tunbridge Wells, where I lived, up to London, where I moved to, and well, anyone. And I had no clients. I didn't know anything, and I bought this John Piper. And I said to a friend of mine, who you know him, a chap called Neil Fairhead. I said, I've got this John Piper. Who do I sell it to? And he said, you know, the biggest dealer in the country, probably the world, for John Piper is Mike Goldmark. And I thought, ah, yes, now I've heard that name. And I rang you up, completely cold call, out of the blue. You didn't know me from Adam. And I described what the John Piper was. It was 3 Suffolk towers. And I said, I just bought this John Piper, would you like to buy it? And you said, what's your name again? And I said, it's Dominic Kemp. And I said, will you buy it for? And I gave you a figure, and you said, hold on a moment. And I thought, oh God. And you went away, and you came back again to the phone. You said, I've just got my book. No, I'm not going to buy that John Piper for that price. And I thought, oh God, I'm going to get screwed down. And you said, I'm going to pay, and you named a price higher than the price that I was asking. And you said to me, because I want you to know, every time you get a John Piper, bring it to me, and I will give you the best price. And from then on, I started bringing all my John Pipers to you. Every time I got a John Piper, I'd pop up the road, and well, I say up the road, up the M11, and that's how we met.
You've already sort of given us a clue to some of the things I wanted to ask you about, because you've run 2 careers.
Yeah.
Because I've known you both as an actor, and
Yeah.
I've watched you on the telly.
Fleetingly.
And I didn't see you in this, but I know from reading that you were in what was one of the very first plays that I ever saw on the stage in London, that long-running Mousetrap.
Yeah, I was in the Mousetrap for a year. In those days, you used to have to do a year's contract. So I did 442 performances, because it would be 8 shows a week for a year, and it was the 50th anniversary year as well. Or was it the 40th? No, the 40th anniversary year. And I thought, yeah, so when I met you, I probably had just done that. And I thought when I got that part, I thought, this is it. This is my big break. I'm playing the lead. It was the main part, the part that Dickie Attenborough played in the Mousetrap. And I thought, yeah, I'm never going to have to look back. And after about 300 performances, I thought, crikey, what am I doing this for? But it was, I really enjoyed it, and I have to say, I would do it. Well, I wouldn't do it again now, but I'm glad I did it. But so yeah, that was about the time, and so after that, I would have been out of work for a while, and that was probably the time when I first came to see you.
So I know you as an art dealer and an author and an actor. Can you explain how all that has happened to you? Was there a particular thing that you wanted to do when you were young?
Yeah, when I was young, my father was in the RAF, and I was sort of destined to go into the RAF, and so that's what I thought I was going to do. I really liked the idea of being a heavy transport pilot, as you know, flying Hercules and things like that. And but then it turned out that you needed maths to be a pilot in the RAF, and I wasn't very good at maths, and so and then my grandfather, who was also in the, he died, and no one was really pushing me, and so I thought, I'm not going to go into the RF if you've got to, you know, kill people and stuff. That's not really me. So I decided what I really wanted to do was be a pop star. So I joined a band, and we released a single. The band was called 10 Seconds, and we released a single which was called Perfection, and it wasn't great. It was far short of its title, and then I was still living at home in Tunbridge Wells, and I can remember my mother saying to me, "You're going to have to start paying rent for your room." I must have been about 19 or 20. I'd been to drama college already, and still kept the band thing. It was a new romantic band, and I was playing the guitar, and my mother said, "You've got to get a job and start paying rent for your room," which I thought was outrageous, but nevertheless, I looked in the local paper, and there was an advertisement for, it said art gallery manager, and I thought, I could do that. Management, that's me. I was always good at art at school, and I was really quite arrogant in those days. You know, when you're young, you think you can do anything. And, so I went along to the interview, and the lady who owned the gallery, it was an oils and Victorian watercolors sort of gallery in the 1980s, and she gave me the job, and I knew nothing about, never worked before, and after a couple of months, I said to her, her name was Juliet Alcock, I owe her an immense debt. She took me on, I knew nothing, and I said, "Juliet, why on earth? You must have known from my interview that I knew nothing. I'm completely bullshitting my way." I can't say that. I'm completely blagging my way through this interview. Why did you take me on? And she said, "I wanted someone who knew nothing, and then I could mentor that person and show them the ropes." And she did, and it was by the end of it, she gave me her checkbook, sent me up to London, said, "Buy what you like, bring it back to the gallery." It was amazing. And then the gallery, and she let me go to auditions and interview for my post at the gallery, for people to, when I got jobs as an actor, I'd go away and someone would fill in for me. And she was brilliant. And slowly the acting career took off, and the art gallery, she decided to move to Suffolk, so the art gallery closed. It was called the York Gallery in Tunbridge Wells, and I was left with some clients in Tunbridge Wells, and I'd moved to London, and I knew people in London, and so I sort of was kind of shuffling pictures from Tunbridge Wells to London. That was my sort of running trip, as it were, when I was out of work as an actor. So, and then after the, good God, you really want to hear all this life story? And then when my son was born, and I started losing my hair, the acting, I just thought, so I was playing, you know, romantic lead roles, and you know, I was in a play for Bill Kenwright called Charlie's Aunt, and you know, I was supposed to be, in that year, I was supposed to be an undergraduate. I was playing a part called Jack, and I must have been about, I was 35, and I was putting boot polish over my hair to try and make it look as if I still looked. It was ridiculous. So I thought, this is not going well. So the acting started to go down, probably of my own accord, and I just concentrated on television and film. And then my son was born, and I just thought, I've got to do something proper here. So I set up my business, which you know, Dominic Kemp, Modern British Prints, and that was in 2007, and started to get my own client, my own private client, do art fairs and things like that, and now the acting has disappeared completely. It was sort of hand in hand for a while, and now I saw my agent about, for goodness, five or 6 years ago, and said, "I think it's time I hung up my boots for good," and I did.
Before we leave the acting entirely,
Yeah, you love it, don't you?
I do, yeah, I do. There are a couple of things that I just wanted to ask you about. I watched you in Silent Witness.
Oh gosh, yes, wow, that was ages ago.
When was it? When you played a paedophile?
Oh yes, no, that was Wire in the Blood.
Wire in the Blood.
Yeah, the Silent Witness was that one with Trevor Eve, and Wire in the Blood was that one with it was similar with oh gosh, the chap from Soldier.
Yeah,
Rob. Oh, I can't remember his name. That's terrible. Yes, and I played a paedophile. Oh God.
I thought you were wonderful in that.
Oh, great! Yeah, well cast.
I did wonder afterwards what it was like walking around in the streets, whether in fact you then, having played the part so brilliantly, whether you would then have problems with the general public.
No, fortunately, no one came up to me. No, I didn't really get any reaction. I did feel slightly weird. It was shot in Robson Green, that's his name.
Robson Green.
It was shot in Newcastle, and I can remember being on the station, having on the way home, and having just done it, sort of immersed myself into it, and feeling a bit kind of grubby and a bit weird and a bit as if people were looking at me, but no one was. And it was a strange thing, because I actually went to the audition to be cast as a doctor in it. Normally I'm cast as doctors and lawyers and things. I was reading the script, and I could see the producer and the director and Robson, because he was part of the production company, going sort of talking to themselves and looking at me and talking to themselves. And after a while they said, "Oh, it's good reading for the doctor. Would you be interested in reading for a different part? It's a much bigger part, a pivotal part, and it's the baddie in the piece. It's his name is Graham Fletcher. He's a paedophile." And I said, "No, my eyes lit up. I thought I didn't care about the paedophile bit. I just thought big part. So I read for that, and they said, that's great. We're going to give you the part." And then I thought, this is really good. And then the next thing that happens is you go home, you sort it out with your agent, and then the costume people phone up, and the costume people said, "I hope you don't. Do you think you could wear the same glasses you were wearing at the casting? In fact, do you think you could wear everything that you were wearing at the casting and bring it with you? We'll pay for it. We'll pay for the costume, pay for it as costume." And so I basically looked exactly like myself. And they obviously thought, they were going, "This guy looks just like a paedophile." But I'd only just started wearing glasses, so they were just sort of $4.99 glasses from Boots. So it was an odd time. I'm glad you saw it.
I thought you were wonderful in it. But before we leave the acting, there was a period when you were recognised. There wasn't there. I seem to remember that you told me that you played a part that was on Polish TV.
Oh God, yes.
And that you were recognised in the streets over there.
Yeah, no, I was recognised. It was a Polish soap that in Poland, it was called London Zinski, which was about Polish people living in London, but it was the majority of it was shot in Warsaw, just outside Warsaw, and it was I played a chap called Michael, who was an undertaker, and I was married to a Polish. It's a weird thing. I had a family, I had a wife, and all the exteriors were shot in London during the summer, and then we'd all fly to Warsaw in the autumn and shoot all the interiors in locations and studios in Poland. And when I was back in London after the thing had aired, it was on TVP, so that's the Polish equivalent of BBC One. It was a big show over there, and my friend was my golfing partner was having his kitchen rebuilt, and I went over to pick him up to play golf, and the builders were Polish, and we went, and we were just about to leave the house, get in the car, go to the golf course, and this massive, great foreman came over and tapped my friend on the shoulder and said, "Do you mind if we have our photograph taken with your friend?" Because they recognised me from their soap, and all the builders were going, "Oh, that's that guy who sung that stupid song on the moped. We've got to have our photo taken with him." So that's pretty much the only time I've been recognised.
Michael?
Come on, let's take a ride. Come on, let's go. It's going to be bumpy. Make a good fist of it. Are you ready? Gosh, I can't believe I remember you. Yeah, that's amazing. You remember me telling you about it.
I suppose we should talk about you and art. And it's interesting because lots of people do come into the art business having done other things and having had some interest in art, but usually they are, very often they are ex-collectors who find they've got too many things, and so they become runners or dealers of some sort. But you came into the art actually in a much bigger way, because you've not only bought and sold things, but you've made a phenomenal contribution with, I've got it beside me, becoming an expert on Terry Frost. I don't know whether you can see this, but this massive volume here, which is the catalogue raisonné of Terry Frost prints, got your name on it. And it's a
thank you for the plug.
And it's a fabulous. Is it still in print?
As a matter of fact, it isn't. It only had a print run of 2000, and it was published in 2010. And I don't exactly know when it sold out, but when it came out, it was £45. And now, to get a second-hand one, it's sort of £250. It's crazy. So yeah, keep hold of that one you've got. That's worth money.
I wish I'd bought more.
Yeah, me too.
It's a terrific book. Tell me about how you met him.
So when I was an actor, and when I was out of work as an actor, I had no stock. I've always loved art. I was good at art at school, and I started to move away from Victorian oils and watercolours from the gallery, and became more interested in modern British art. And a lot of the artists were still alive. Artists like Terry, Mary Fedden, and Sandra Blow, and so you could write to them and go and say, please, can I come and visit you? Maybe I'd like to buy a collage or something. And so I just wrote to these artists completely on spec, and generally they wrote back and said, yes, please come and see me. And I went to visit Mary Fedden, gosh, dozens of times. And Terry Frost, he was brilliant. Again, just like you, he didn't know me from Adam, and yet he was unbelievably welcoming and not at all on any kind of a high horse. And the first contact I had with him after I'd written to him was a phone call, and I was living in Camberwell at the time, and I just got this call, and it was, hello, is that, I'm trying, he had a bit of a Birmingham accent. I'm not even going to try the Birmingham accent. He was born in Leamington Spa, so he had a slight, and and he said, I bet you don't know where I am. And I said, Newland, which is where he lived. And he said, no, I'm just up the road from you. And I lived about 4 or 5 doors down from one of his sons, Simon, on Grove Lane in Camberwell. And whenever Terry came up to do an exhibition or an opening or needed to come to London, he would stay there. And there we were almost neighbours. And he invited me down to his house, which was his house and studio. It was called Gurnick Field, right on the top of the cliffs overlooking Newlyn Harbour. Gosh, it was beautiful. And he spent a lot of time with me, and I was asking him, what are you doing? He was working on something when I first went to the studio, and it was a little collage. It was only about that big, the size of a postcard almost, and it was just strips of coloured cardboard, and then he sort of sprinkled sort of little boat shapes, little crescents on there, and he said, that's it. And I said, what? He said, I've been thinking about that for some time, and I haven't managed to make the two ideas work together, but I think that's it. And I said, that's fantastic. Can I have that? And he said, no. It was a little maquette for a screen print. So he was going to take this tiny little painted, quite roughly collaged thing into the print studio. And what came out was a massive screen print. It was actually called Swing Rhythm, the screen print. And that's really what got me into printmaking and into Terry Frost and writing the book on Terry, because I thought, a lot of art dealers come from an art history background or a collective background, as you say, and I just thought, no one's going to take me seriously as a dealer in my own right. They're going to think, who's this upstart actor? What does he know? So I just thought, I will write the catalogue raisonné of Terry Frost's prints to try just to hang on the coattails of the great man, and hopefully, a little bit of kudos for myself, to be selfish about it.
I think a lot of kudos, and it's a massive volume, and I think Lund Humphries really did you proud in the way in which they produced it.
Yeah,
and what a lot of work, 250 something prints that he made.
Yeah. And so far, I don't think I've missed 2, but I know that I've missed them. I mean, I'm probably the only person who sees the flaws in the book. There's some colour problems, which, it was the first book I ever wrote, and if I knew then what I know now, I would have stood on the shoulder of the designer and said, no, it should be like that, because screens get calibrated in different ways. It was printed in China, so it went out looking one way. At the cover, for example, the cover is a detail from a screen print called Lizard Black. And you can see down, I don't know, I'm pointing at my screen as you're putting it up. You can see down the left-hand side, those sort of yellow, those. The middle one's supposed to be green. One of them's supposed to be sort of lemon yellow. So the colours aren't right. And so it makes me cross. Terry would be cross as well. And, hopefully there'll be a second edition and I can put everything right.
Yes. Do you have all those prints? And we haven't sold 250 different ones, but we've sold a lot of them. I must have had about a third of them through my hands at one point or another. And I have a favourite series, and I wondered whether you have. Shall I?
I know what your favourite series is. You love the Lorca suite, the Lorca portfolio.
I do.
I mean, it's probably. He didn't make that many series. He made a series of Madron woodcuts, but I suppose a series of prints go. It's got to be his most important. They were all etchings and aquatints, and they are, yeah, they are fantastic, and he worked on them for years, and he always thought, ever since he first read Lorca's poetry, which would have been in the sort of mid-late 70s, he always intended to make a substantial body of work based around Lorca's poetry, and that culminated in the Lorca portfolio, which is wonderful. And what attracted Terry to Lorca, it was because he could see the colours in the words, and he felt an immediate kind of affinity with Lorca through Lorca's words. And even though they never met, they never knew each other. Lorca was dead by, I think, 1936, and it was the idea, you mentioned it a couple of days ago, that idea of the duende, that sort of southern Spanish. Lorca was, I think, born in Almeria in where is that? What's the Andalusia, and a very passionate kind of demonic people. In fact, Lorca said in his, he wrote about the duende in, I think, 1934, something called the play and theory of duende, and he talked about it as being a demon that the artist has to do battle with in order to produce fabulous art. And Terry loved that. He loved this kind of spontaneity and sort of almost diabolical edge. You have to be a little bit, you have to sort of understand evil to be able to produce something good, I think. And that's what he did in the Lorca portfolio. There's a collection of the poems.
Should we say more about what the poem was about, what it was actually illustrating? The fact that it was
one of Terry's favourite, and I think my favourite, I think everyone's favourite. I've actually got I have by my side a copy of my own book, and so there's this one, which I don't know whether you can see that. I'll try and make it look. Okay, so can you see that?
Yes. Yes.
So that one is called, that's the first one in the portfolio, and Terry's favourite was that one, and the last one, which is called The Old Lizard, which is, I'll show you that one as well if you like. That one, which is very much him at home on the circle.
Yes.
I love that one as well. But the first one is called The Lament for Ignacio Sanchez Mejías, and it's incredible. The reason it's so powerful, in fact, it epitomizes why the whole portfolio is so powerful, because people may not remember this guy. So Ignacio Sanchez Mejías was like, he was like David Beckham. He was an enormous hero in Spain, pre-Civil War Spain, and he was like a Hollywood star. He was Frank Sinatra, but he was a bullfighter, and he and a writer apparently. And he everywhere he went, people would bow down in the streets. He was a complete and utter star. And then in 1934, was it? I think it was 1934. He was in the ring at the Plaza del Manzanares, and a bull got him, and he was gored to death in front of thousands of people in the bull ring at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And the whole of Spain went into mourning, and it was horrible, it was shocking, and Lorca wrote a poem about it called The Lament for Ignacio Sanchez Mejías, and that, if you can see there, so that's the bull's horn, that is the blood of the bullfighter, and this is showing the time of day, 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and it really sums up what Terry, so those are Terry's colours: white, black, red, red, black, white. And in the poem, I've got it written down, it'll be in here. In the poem, the Lorca poem, it just says, "O white wall of Spain, O black bull of sorrow, O hard blood of Ignacio." And that was it for Terry. He could see it. He could see the pictures in the words, the colours.
What I find sort of strange is this set, which I think was 11 prints, wasn't it? Some of them he had hand colour on them.
Yeah.
And they're super prints.
Yeah.
And they are informed, and I found them very emotional, and they're informed by something outside himself, by a wonderful poem.
Yeah.
When I look at many of the other prints, I don't see the same sort of thing. I wondered why he didn't do that more often. Or am I missing the...
Well, obviously I'm a big fan. And, you know, it's really difficult, especially with abstract or expressionist work. You know, you shouldn't have to know more in order to appreciate. If the picture's not communicating something to you, then it's not really doing its job properly. But if you know things like you understand how Terry's vocabulary of shapes came about, how a black sun can also be an olive, things like that. And the crescent can be the rhythm of the waves, and it can also be the moon. There is a definite correlation in everything he did, was grounded in the world around him. And it's more a case of, yeah, I mean, it's fun to decipher, actually. And he did spend, yeah, he did produce a lot of work, and he was a great hoarder. He would never throw anything away, and he'd always come back to things later on and add a little bit of collage or work something over again. And I can see how people may find it difficult to really get to grips with, but all I can say is persevere.
You also have an interest, don't you, in the work of Michael Ayrton, and I can see one on the wall.
Yes,
behind you.
There we are.
And indeed, you've been kind enough to write a lovely article for our next magazine on Ayrton.
Oh, good. Yeah, I really enjoyed doing that, actually. Thank you for asking me. Ayrton is someone who, a bit like Terry Frost, had this, you know, couldn't sit still, had this kind of visceral boil inside him, needed to create, needed to get ideas. He was obsessed, just like Terry was obsessed with Lorca, you know, haunted almost to the extent of madness. And yeah, Ayrton was the same with with many things, but in particular the bit that I wrote about in for you this Christmas is the Minotaur, the idea of the man and the beast coming together, the innocence of the beast, the intellect of a man, what's the word, I suppose the horrible base instinct of a beast compared to the more chosen and civilized feelings of emotion, I suppose, of a man, and that fascinated him. And he loved I don't know whether you can see that he loved musculature, musculature, and you know, some people think they're quite nightmarish images. These men and women with enormous calves and thighs and arched backs, and some of the sculptures he made are really quite grotesque. But I find that very attractive.
Would you, I mean, we have talked briefly that there is not a cat res of Ayrton prints,
No.
but is that a step too far for you now?
Do you know, I actually went to Lund Humphries. Occasionally they asked me, will you do something else? And they asked me to do like an overview of St Ives printmaking. And I just thought, gosh, that's an enormous task. I can't do that. But what I do fancy is a catalogue raisonné of Ayrton's prints. And so they talked about it for a while and then decided not to, because for this reason, they deemed his images not commercial enough. So, I mean, rough with the smooth. You can't always have pretty pictures if you're an artist.
How terrible of him not to have made commercial.
I know, yeah, he'd probably love that. He'd love that idea.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm sure, I have no doubt at all that that one is deserved, because I think that Ayrton has been hugely underestimated and in a way sidelined by the art establishment in this country.
Yeah, I think you're right.
I think it's only a matter of time.
Yeah. Well, I know that the estate are planning something for his anniversary, so his centenary, as it were, which is next year, 2021. And so he might get a bit more on the map. I think the real, he kind of shot himself in the foot. He was trying to straddle too many lines in his lifetime. And one of those lines was he was a critic. And to be an artist and a critic, it's like being an actor and a theatre critic. You just can't do the same things. You can't do both things together. So perhaps he should have written a little less and sculpted a little more.
Well, perhaps you can do both things together, but that you risk what the establishment might think of you.
Yeah. Well, you do. If you're a critic, you put yourself. Yeah, you literally put yourself up there to be pilloried.
I used to listen to him when I was a kid. He was on the, if I remember rightly, he was on the Brains Trust with Professor Bronowski.
Oh wow!
It was a long time ago, and I did not understand very much of. I was little. I did not understand much of what they were saying, but I knew that the conversation was phenomenal.
That's fantastic. Those things must still be on record somewhere, do you think?
Well, one would hope so. But, you know, he was a poet and a writer and a sculptor.
Yeah.
And a great thinker, translator.
Yeah, translator, exactly. I mean, that's so many things.
But I have a feeling that in general, we have in the art establishment in this country admired the one-trick ponies. And I think that's going to change in the next little while. And I think we're going to look at and rate more highly the work of some of these great artists who could turn their hand to almost anything and did. We're just working with the estate. We've just acquired the estate of Anthony Gross.
Yes.
With a phenomenal output and range, but that's perhaps for another time.
Well, you've got to get into Terry Frost even more than you already are, because he had that Michael Ayrton thing. He wrote lots of poetry. There's loads of poetry.
I didn't know that.
He also, you're going to like this, he also made ceramics. There are, I mean, he didn't sort of hand make them himself. It was more on the sort of Picasso style of a charger or something is ready made, and he decorated it. But there are lots of sort of mugs, glassware, and plates and bowls and things which he did in Venice and in down in St Ives, and so. And of course, he was a printmaker and a painter. He did make constructions as well. He did, yeah, he did a load of things, and he felt that there was a natural crossover between the printmaking and the painting, that one informed the other.
Yes, I will look harder at that. Will you talk a little bit? You mentioned to me fairly recently something that I knew almost nothing about, and I was fascinated.
Can't believe that.
And it was caution.
Oh gosh, yes, yes.
Will you talk to us a little bit about caution and the importance of caution?
Well, I suppose I found out about caution through Terry, and actually it's quite serendipitous. So this is a lithograph from 1952 called Blue Moon.
Yeah.
Does that work?
Yes, yes, yes.
And he did that at Caution Court in 1952. And the reason Caution is so important is because, well, I'll give you a bit of background. So Caution Court, it's still there. It's a lovely, big, stately home. It was owned by Baron Methuen since the 18th century, and it was designed by Capability Brown. And you can go around it now. It's like a part of it is open as a stately home.
Was that the publishing family, Methuen?
Do you know? I don't know. Maybe it was.
Right.
Now you say that. Was he made a baron?
I'll look it up.
I wish I had. And when during the war, Bath Academy of Art was bombed. The premises was bombed out, and Lord Methuen offered his premises, Caution Court, as the new home after the war for Bath Academy of Art. And so in 1946, they moved all the equipment, all the teachers to Caution, which is, it's not far from Bath. It's about, it's just up the road from Chippenham. And it was out of the goodness of his heart. He was a patron of the arts. And the principal there was a chap called Clifford Ellis. Clifford and Rosemary Ellis were sort of poster designers, artists in their own right, but Clifford Ellis oversaw the setting up of Caution, Bath Academy of Art at Caution, and he had the foresight, and because it was sort of equidistant between London and St Ives, it became this this hotbed for artists, and the people who taught there during the 50s and 60s, late 40s and 50s and 60s, you know, it's like a who's who. William Scott, Kenneth Armitage was head of sculpture. Peter Lanyon taught there. Adrian Heath, Howard Hodgkin, Brian Winter, and Terry Frost. Terry Frost taught there as well, and that's where he did this lithograph with a chap who was head of lithography, who's another chap I like to champion because he's a proper printmaker first, painter second, and that kind of thing I love. People like Stanley Hayter, Michael Rodenstein, Julian Trevelyan, people who were printmakers first and painters second. And his name was Henry Cliff, And I know we've talked about Henry Cliff, and he was head of lithography. He'd actually been at Corsham as a student in 1946, and then went on to become professor of lithography there, I think until he, maybe until he died, I'm not sure. He died in 1983, and Corsham moved back to where it is now. The Bath Academy of Art is now at Bath Spa University, and not at Corsham Court anymore. And so the lithograph that Terry made, he made with Henry Cliff. But something I would love to know, and I never asked Terry this, and in fact, is something went wrong in the production of the lithograph, and I think they fell out. I'm not sure, which is really weird because everyone loved Terry. I mean, he didn't suffer fools gladly, but he was an incredibly, his spirit was, you know, when I was writing, you know, people absolutely adored him. He had a huge charisma. So the idea that he might fall out with someone seems unlikely to me. But anyway, something happened between him and Henry Cliff in the lithography studio, and he took away his lithograph, half done, and then finished it off with lino cut yeah, on his sort of kitchen floor in his studio. But Henry Cliff went on, and he's hugely underrated. At the time, he was, you know, he was a big artist. He represented Britain at the Venice Biennale twice, once in 1954 with people like Lucian Freud and Ben Nicholson, Francis Bacon. But again, he's a bit forgotten now. But people like you and I aim to put that right.
Is there a book to be written on Corsham?
Well, I've got a little book on lithography by this is Henry Cliff's book on lithography, which he wrote at Corsham Court, and it has things that he did, things that his students did. There's a lithograph called I think it's called Evening Raga, Morning Raga, which he did in 1964, and that's very him, really. It's a raga is I know you know this. You're big on music. It's a sort of Indian form of music. So that's an abstracted sitar,
right?
And he did a music suite in 1964. He was really into music. One of the other lithographs in the suite is called MJQ, the cylinder, and MJQ stands for Modern Jazz Quartet. So he loved Miles Davis. Another lithograph he did was called Miles Davis at the Carnegie Hall. But of course, it looks nothing like Miles Davis at the Carnegie. It's just very abstracted. But,
maybe sometime we could commission you, if you were so kind as to do an article for our magazine on Corsham.
Oh yeah, I'd love to.
But that would be fascinating.
Yeah, I'd like that very much.
And talking about printmaking, I know another something else which has interested you a lot, because you've mentioned it to me on more than one occasion, and that's printmaking of sculptors.
Yeah, I'm glad. Yeah, that leads on from this crossover idea between how printmaking sometimes gets a bad press, if you excuse the pun.
Actually, I'm not sure I will.
That's why. There's a title. People are a bit sniffy. They say, why do I want to print? Why can't I have the original? And it's very difficult when I do art fairs to try and get through to people that it is an original print. It doesn't exist as a painting. It's not, you know, it's not a poster. It's not a photograph of a painting that's reproduced. It's something that only works as an edition. And when you see number 1 of 75, there are only 75 of those things, and there isn't a painting of them or a drawing of them, because you are you are working on a matrix like a plate or a stone, and then at the end of it, it's scored through, or it's ground down, used again. You screen print, once you've squeeze it over the silk screen, it's useless. You can't do it again, so you just throw it away. And I think the thing that fascinates me about sculptors and printmakers is that sculpture also deals with a similar process, using similar materials. So a sculptor might produce a maquette and take it into, like Terry produced his little postcard thing and took it into the printmaking studio. A sculptor might produce a maquette, take it into a foundry, and produce an edition of maybe 9 bronzes, and that editing process, that collaborative process, is similar. The printmaker and Henry Moore said I've read this it's at the front of one of his the catalogue raisonné, that Gerald Kramer thing, and he found that working with similar materials was better for him than drawing. He could it would help him visualize his sculpture in an experimental way before he actually got down to hacking away at a piece of marble or something. And so he would be using copper, metal for etchings, and stone. Lithography is traditionally made on stone, so he'd be used to using these sort of materials. And I've got okay, there we go. So this is, I don't know whether you can see that.
Yes.
So that's called Reclining Figure Cave, and that's a lithograph. So he drew that on stone, and you can see that it's a lot of his figures are bronze, some of them are fiberglass, and you can see this has a kind of boulder. Well, I mean boulder as in B-O-U-L-D-E-R quality to it. Yes. And because it's the idea of the figure and the stone, the landscape. Stonehenge, he also did Stonehenge, a series of lithographs of Stonehenge, and he started off using etching on copper plates, and thought, that's no good, I need to work on stone at Stonehenge. And so that crossover between printmaking and sculptor is, I think, integral. Jeffrey Clark he didn't sketch, he only used monotypes to visualize ideas that he had. Monotypes are, as you know, I know you know this, are basically prints, except you only get one of them. And Barbara Hepworth, Elizabeth Frink, and the great thing about print is you don't always know how it's going to turn out. So, and also it's going to come out mirror image. And so you can, you get an extra dimension if you are taking your inspiration from a print as a sculptor.
Dominic, fascinating. Dominic Kemp, actor, art dealer, author. There's one more A that I can think of, and that's auctioneer, because you do some of that now as well, don't you?
Yeah, yeah.
And the auctioneer actually that loops back to the acting as well, because weren't you an auctioneer in a film?
Yeah. You've done your homework, Mike. Yes, I played, in fact, that's how I became an auctioneer. I'm only a freelance auctioneer for a couple of auction houses, and a good friend of mine saw me in this film, and it was a film. It was a big film. It was a big Hollywood film. It had Renée Zellweger in it, and Ewan McGregor, and me. And it was about Beatrix Potter. It was called Miss Potter. It came out about I can't remember, about 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago. I don't know when it came out. Yeah, maybe 10 years ago. And Beatrix Potter was, she was partly responsible for helping to set up the National Trust. And so this was a sort of dramatized life story of Beatrix Potter with Renée Zellweger playing Beatrix Potter. And she bought a lot of property up in the Lake District. And I played the land agent who effectively auctioned the property and she bought it. And so, yeah, there I am on the silver screen. And yeah, and the friend of mine, Jill Hutchings, who used to own the Curwen Gallery, who I love and I can't speak of highly enough. She saw me in that and said, will you come and do auctions for me? And I really enjoyed it. And then and it just sort of went on from there. Now I do sort of maybe an auction every month or two.
Fantastic. Dominic, it's been an absolute delight. Really, I've really enjoyed it, and I hope
Me too.
And I think we should do it again sometime.
Okay, maybe we should. But to begin with, I was quite apprehensive, as you know, and but actually, yeah, who doesn't like talking about themselves the whole time?
You're terrific. Thank you very much.
Oh, thanks, Mike.
Cheers.
Cheerio.